Hi, Steve here with digitalphotographygear.com, and today I'm going to be talking about wide-angle lens choices for Canon shooters. Canon makes a whole bunch of different wide-angle lenses, ultra-wide angles, primes, zooms, a whole bunch of different types of lenses. So I'm just going to go over a few of my favorites and why I like them, and talk about a couple specialized different types of lenses as well. So if you have a full-frame camera, choosing a wide-angle lens can be a little tricky. If you have an APS-C sensor SLR, there are fewer choices, so it makes it a little easier. So I'm just going to jump right in talking about the APS-C sensor first. There's really only one zoom lens choice in terms of wide angle. It's the EFS 10 to 22 millimeter f3.5 to 4.5. It is an EFS lens, so it will not fit on a full-frame camera, but in terms of on an APS-C sensor, it becomes the equivalent of approximately a 16 to 35 millimeter perspective. So it's really good. Images are really nice coming out of that lens. It's not quite as fast as some of the choices for full-frame, but it's light, it's small, great image quality, and I definitely recommend that lens if you have an APS-C sensor like a 7D or 60D or a Canon Rebel series. It makes a great choice. If you have a full-frame SLR, there are a bunch more options. There are two zoom lenses that are really good for wide angles. This is one of them. This is the 16 to 35 millimeter f2.8L lens. They also have a 17 to 40 millimeter f4L, which is I would say almost as good as the 16 to 35 in terms of image quality. It does cover a little bit of longer focal range, however it is one stop slower. So if you need the speed of f2.8, definitely 16 to 35 will be your choice. But if you do mostly landscapes or architecture where you don't necessarily need the speed, you do want deeper depth of field, and you're using a tripod, for instance, and you're shooting at f11, 16, 22, then 17 to 40 will probably be just fine. It's also quite a bit cheaper than the 16 to 35 as well. Canon makes a whole bunch of different prime lenses. Starting at the bottom, or at the shortest focal length, there's a 14 millimeter f2.8L, which is a very, very good lens, a very expensive lens as well. It's very sharp from edge to edge, great color, great contrast. It does have a convex front element, and it doesn't accept front filters, screw-on filters like most lenses, but it does have a little gel holder in the back. But again, that's a pretty specialized lens and very expensive, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend that lens if you're only looking for one wide-angle lens, but it is an excellent lens for what it does. Canon also makes a whole bunch of lenses between 20 and 28 millimeters. There's a 20 millimeter f2.8, there's 3 24 millimeter lenses, and 3 28 millimeter lenses. Out of all those, I recommend the most the 24 millimeter f1.4L lens. It is an L lens, so it has great build quality, great optical elements. Yeah, sharp from the center of the frame to the edge of the frame. Yeah, just all around great lens, good color, contrast, bokeh, all that stuff. Moving up from there a little bit, 35 millimeter, Canon makes two options there. One being the 35 millimeter f1.4L lens, which I also definitely recommend. Like the 24L and the 14L, just excellent build quality, excellent image quality, sharp, and yeah, just it's the best of the best that you can get from Canon. It's one of my favorite lenses, actually, not just for landscape, architecture, and whatnot, but also for weddings or full-body portraits. It's also an excellent choice. If that's a little bit out of your price range, they also make a 35 millimeter f2 lens. It's a lot less expensive. Image quality and build quality isn't quite there, but but it's pretty sharp in the center of the frame and makes a good alternative if the 35L is a little out of your price range. There are a couple different specialized lenses that Canon makes as well that fall into the wide-angle category. Two of them are fisheye lenses, and a fisheye lens is different from a regular wide-angle lens because it creates a much more distortion than a wide-angle lens. Every wide-angle lens is going to have some distortion, but fisheye lenses are, think about a very, very high amount of barrel distortion. So it's very interesting. You can create unique and unusual perspectives with a fisheye, but they're not all that practical for everyday use. Canon does make two of those, one being the 15mm f2.8 and the other being an 8 to 15mm f4L, which is interesting because it's a zoom lens. And at 8mm on a full frame camera it'll be a circular fisheye, and it'll cover 180 degrees field of view, and you zoom into 15mm and it becomes a full frame fisheye on a full frame SLR, and which is pretty versatile in terms of fisheye lens. You can have either circular or a full frame, which is great. The 15mm fisheye is also really nice. It's only acts as a full frame fisheye, but it is one stop faster at f2.8 as well. So I recommend either of those. They're both fun lenses, but again, not very practical. And the 8 to 15 is also much more expensive, being an L lens. Canon also has what are called tilt shift lenses. They have a 17mm and a 24mm, which are both wide angle lenses. They have a couple others as well, I believe a 45 and a 90mm. But what tilt shift lenses do is you can shift the image circle away from the camera's sensor, so you can correct perspectives, you can straighten lines, and you can change your plane of focus. They're very, very specialized lenses, and I really wouldn't recommend getting one of those unless you're absolutely sure that you need one. If you do professional architecture photography, for instance, it would be an excellent choice for a lens. But for everyday wide-angle use, they're just too much, I would say. But yeah, so there are a lot of different wide-angle lens choices that Canon makes, and I definitely recommend the 16 to 35. I feel is the best choice for a full-frame camera in terms of quality, speed, and versatility. 17 to 40 is also an excellent choice, and both the 24L and the 35L are both excellent choices as well if you're looking for a prime lens. And if you really need the ultra wide, 14L is an excellent choice too. But yeah, I like ultra wide and wide angles because it creates a perspective that you can't really see with the human eye compared to like a normal perspective like 50 or 85mm. So it's definitely fun to play around with them. Just be careful of the interesting perspective that it causes as well. But so those are my recommendations for Canon wide-angle lenses. And join me next time when I review some more gear and talk about some more photo stuff here on digitalphotographygear.com.